Let's Get To presents
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here come the Astros, burning with desire. Here come the Astros, breathing orange fire. Here come the Astros, with winning on their mind. Here come the Astros, number one every time. Go, go, Astros. We want Houston! Alvarez hits a high drive, center field. Veerling's back. This game is turned upside down.
And the pitch is lifted to right by Castellanos. Long run for Tucker over toward the line and foul territory. Makes the catch, and the Houston Astros do it again. 2022 World Series champions.
And now, Go Astros. Astros baseball from three guys who've been there since Art Howe had hair. And I know at the end of last week's Go Astros, Andy said we'd be back next week. And then Jose Altuve had to go and ruin our week off. Guys, we were here. Andy Tom Cheston's here. Andy, how you doing?
Wearing black because I'm in mourning for the future 3,000 hit chase of Jose Altuve.
Well, and I was gonna joke, Brian, that Andy wasn't here because he was so upset about Jose Altuve being hurt and not because he had a work thing. Brian Arbor is here. Brian, how are you?
I am. My thumbs are better than Jose Altuve, so that's something. My basketball skills, not so much.
Let's jump into that, and I'll go with Andy first because I think you and I obviously are messaging this whole time as the internet is reacting and overreacting to injuries we didn't even really know what they were, because we went from amputated arm to cracked thumb. Just what was your take, Andy, watching sort of the Astros media light kind of reacting to this whole event?
Well, it got very silly when it got to end-stage syphilis, which is that's unfounded and shouldn't be talking about that sort of thing. I mean, where it is for those of you, anybody tuning in, I assume knows, Jose Altuve has a fractured thumb. That's the official diagnosis from the Astros and the Astros team doctors. Your mileage may vary on how much credence you want to give the Astros team doctors because they're really, really good. They have not said the word discomfort around the thumb yet, so there's some hope.
This is why I like Venezuela's communication better than the Astros. Viva Venezuela.
Yeah. Coach Lopez was a lot more like it's bad and it's going to be bad, but never was the word discomfort meant or mentioned. There's been no timetable announced. Bob Nightingale, among others, has tried to put a timetable on it. I know Brian's got some more information.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
What the timetable is going to potentially look like. But it's not a great scenario, but it's not the worst case in the world scenario either, because players very often have broken thumbs mid-season and come back during that same season. So this is not a season ender. This is an inconvenience for a team that is, in theory, as loaded as the Astros are.
Yeah, wasn't it Springer in 2017 who did break a thumb sliding into second? Do I have this right? And then was back to later that year.
That's part of the reason why everybody on the Astros wears those oven mitts when they slide.
Right. Okay. Now, Brian, you blew my mind when, Brian, you're always able to find I'm just shocked at the stuff people track. And you were able to basically find analytics about how long it takes to get over certain injuries. Now that we know it's a thumb, what are you seeing in the stuff you've looked up as far as where we could be timetable wise as far as getting him back?
Yeah. So Baseball Prospectus has a database on how long it takes people to recover from injuries. And so I was able to look at that, and you can do just a general thing to look at broken hands, and that usually takes about 44 days. Broken thumbs on average take a little bit less if you sort of piece through the individual data, but I was looking at it, there's a wide variation, and the variation, I have a doctorate, but it's not medicine. So I'm make sure I, don't get too far here in talking about sort of what it means to have a broken thumb. But This looks very similar to the injury that Bryce Harper had last year, where he broke his thumb and needed surgery, and he was out for about 2 months.
Right.
Right at 2 months, 61 days, according to the database. Most people can recover sooner than that, but most of them don't require surgery. So the expectation is that Altuve will have his surgery later this week. He needs some swelling to go down before they can effectively get in there and do whatever they need to do on the surgery. The bad news is Jose Altuve is an awesome player. I don't need to tell anyone listening to an Astros podcast that. You've known that for the last decade. The good news is this happened in March and not later in the season.
Yeah.
Just to say that I'm going to object a little bit to Dana Brown saying it's a devastating blow.
I get the impression that we're going to hear a lot of hyperbole from Mr. Brown during the course of his tenure, and that's okay.
Yeah.
He wears sunglasses indoors. I mean, he's that kind of guy.
Yeah. And I remember Rome. I got into it with Rome on my burner account. I have a burner account to go after Chandler Rome, by the way. And he used a different word than devastating. And I was like, those two words you're using don't mean actually the same thing. I forgot what his word was. I don't want to go back to give him any more hits than he has to. But let's talk about the impact. And I'm of the opinion that taking a step back, like a sort of 3,000-foot view of it all, it leaves the team as strong as last year. Because last year we talked on this show for an entire baseball season. It is a dynamic 1 through 7 with 2 iffy spots at the end of the lineup. And we talked coming into this season that now we've made that 1 through 8 stack. So basically, I think having Abreu take away Yuli's lack of production in many ways keeps it balanced. All right, Brian, am I being Pollyanna on this thing, or am I in somewhere in the right ballpark, according in your opinion?
No, I think you are in the right ballpark. The offense will clearly be worse not having Jose Altuve. His replacements have some good qualities to them. David Hensley, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, has really outstanding plate discipline. He's improved his plate discipline throughout the minors, and that's the skill that's carried him to the major leagues. Mauricio Dubon is an excellent defensive player. Now, Jose Altuve has more than one sort of elite level characteristic, and that's why he's we think him a future Hall of Famer. So it's obviously a decline on offense, but it's something that's survivable. Good baseball players get you about 4 to 5 wins per season. That's why you need so many of them.
Yeah.
Why are the Astros better than the Angels? The Angels start with the 2 best talents in baseball and add to them sometimes almost nothing. The Astros don't have players quite that good, but they've got a lot more good players than the Angels, and you stack those on top of the other. It also means that when you lose one of them, hey, this is still a lineup with Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker, and Yordan Alvarez looks to be back on track towards opening day. And, Jose Abreu now, who's an upgrade on Yuli Gurriel on the offense. So, yeah, it's not good. They can survive it.
Andy, where are you with this? The sort of survivability of it all? Because, again, 8 weeks is not that long in baseball, so there's no reason to make a knee-jerk move to bring in somebody else.
As one door closes, another door opens, and for David Hensley and indirectly Justin Durden, this isn't bad news. David Hensley is probably going to be at least in a rotation or a platoon with Mauricio Dubon at second base, which means his playing time is going to increase, which means he can't be available. Neither of them are really going to be available for any kind of outfield rotation, which means Justin Durden is almost assuredly going to make the opening day lineup. You compound that with Alvarez being iffy to start on opening day and Brantley very likely not being ready for opening day. So good news for both of them. The other thing is that we talk a lot about on this show and most baseball shows about rookies, the league catching up to them. So if David Hensley, for instance, has a hole in his swing, the league will find it, and then word will get around, this is how you pitch that guy. Based on our new balanced schedule, we don't face the same opponent twice until the middle of May when we play the White Sox again on the 12th. So it's not like we're getting a healthy diet of Angels, Mariners, Rangers, and A's like we would have last year to beat on those weaknesses. The downside of that is we don't get to play the A's 17 times this year, which always helps your record. I don't think the Astros, they can't sign Jurickson Profar because that was immediately where a lot of Astros minds went, because he has evidently signed a deal. I forget who with
Colorado, I think.
The Rockies, he wants to hit 30 home runs next year.
Sure. And good for him. But I don't think he's the answer anyway. And I think one of the changes, because of the rules that baseball is putting in place, the no shifting, is going to put a premium on second baseman who can actually play defense. And Jurickson Profar is a lot of things. He is not a good defensive second baseman, and he's going to be more exposed in a league where he can't be helped by being stuck out in short right field while the shortstop covers his territory for every left-handed hitter that comes to the plate. I think that's good news for the Astros, that option was taken out of their hands. The bad news is it better be Hensley, because there is really nothing else in the Astros organization as far as minor leaguers who are ready to come take a big chunk of innings at second base. So it's a short-term issue. I don't think the Astros need to deal for anybody. I am a little bit wary that they're not giving a time frame on Altuve's injury yet, which means to me, in my complete lack of medical training, is that whatever they saw in the imaging wasn't definitive enough for them to say this is what this is. So they're going to wait, as Brian said, wait for the swelling to go down, go do the surgery, and see exactly what we're talking about. Because if it's a fracture of a certain type, that's one thing. If it's multiple fractures, or they're shattering to the bone, or something else that they need to go actually see, that might be something. It might be a completely different healing scenario. Either way, Altuve's back probably by June, worst case by July, with a lot of bad things going on. But this isn't an end of the world kind of thing for the Astros. It's just going to change the way that Dusty needs to construct his lineup, and that we need to think about what the Astros offense is going to look like. Because as good as David Hensley may or may not be, he's not going to be Jose Altuve. And casting those expectations on him is going to be not only unfair to David Hensley, but also super frustrating for yourself if that's what you're planning on doing.
Well, I think the other thing too, to him being back June and July, I mean, let's be honest, is he'll have fresher legs. And that's something that
I also don't love at his age, though, because I do think he still has an outside chance at 3,000 hits. The older he gets, the more that chance goes down. But when you're missing potentially a third of a season, well, that's a third of a season you're not collecting any hits. So I want to see Altuve get that record. I certainly want to see him get it in an Astros uniform.
And he missed 2/3 of 2000 with the pandemic.
Right. So these things aren't.
Oh, yeah.
These things aren't helping his chase. The good news for Astros fans is Altuve is generally durable. He generally heals quickly. He generally comes back from things. We're just dealing with the unknown because he hasn't had to deal with a surgery yet. Not in season anyway.
All right, so we'll start with Andy on this one. Then where do you think the 3,000 hit chase sits? I mean, I felt like it was definitely within reach before. Do you feel like there's still a puncher's chance at him getting it?
I mean, he'll get to 2,000 this year, provided he comes back at some point before, right around the June timeframe. I think that's still attainable. If not, it'll be the very first part of the 24 season. Then it's just a matter of attrition. How many seasons can he put up 180 hits plus and still continue to be effective? I have a feeling that Jim Crane will continue to allow him to roll out at second base or DH for as long as he wants to keep doing that. It's a matter of how much fun it is for him. I still think it's going to happen. I just think this makes it more difficult.
Brian, what about you? You think it's still going to happen?
As with anyone going for 3,000 hits, the real key is the late end of their career. So Altuve will turn 33 in May. He's at 1,935 hits, so he'll need a little over 1,000 hits from his age 33 through his age. Insert really high number here. There's every reason to think he'll be a productive player for 3-4 years. The thing is, to be a 3,000 hit player, he needs to be productive for 6-7 years, or get a contract like Miguel Cabrera, where they're just going to have to play him to get him to 3,000 to make some money off the deal, which Jim Crane's less likely to do, but we'll see. That's that's a future issue.
Yeah, and I think if you want to compare him to Craig Biggio, which I think is a decent comparison for this particular stat, Biggio got the record in his age 41 season, so that leaves Altuve 8 seasons to try to chase that. And Biggio at the end was collecting about 150 to 130 hits that season. So the good thing I like about Altuve, and I think why his chances might be better, is because he has shown the ability to adjust his approach at the plate to get on base more than hit for power. I think we've seen the power thing the last few seasons, but I think if he had a goal in sight and it was going to help the team for him just to be a guy that hits singles and doubles all the time, that's what he would do, and he'd be successful at it. I don't think his game is necessarily predicated on I've got to hit for power or I'm worthless.
So we're dealing with Brantley not starting, probably not being ready for opening day, in part because they waited so long to have that surgery last season. You've got Jordan still slowly coming back from the thumb. You've got McCullers obviously dealing with whatever McCullers is dealing with. It's a situation where Astros fans are going to really have to put that whole Memorial Day thing to heart when it comes to looking at standings, because it seems like one of the downfalls of winning the World Series is much less time to recover. And I think that's what we're dealing with now. Brian, is that what you're seeing?
Yeah. I mean, so the biggest issue, you lose one player like Altuve for 2 months, 3 months. It's not a big deal. You have multiple high-level players out. That's when it gets to be a really big deal. So, but on both the McCullers front and the Jordan front, the news in February was bad. The news in March has been better. They've seen Jordan seems to be Jordan. It just seems to me they decided don't take any swings in anger in March in spring training. Let's just save them all up for opening day. I think this is a scheduled plan to just get them ready for opening day. Fingers crossed. With McCullers, obviously it wasn't a plan for him not to be ready for opening day, but he's been throwing the ball. He's been ramping up. So the news in March is maybe he won't be out for that long. Again, fingers crossed. And, if anyone knows how to come back from an injury, it's Lance McCullers, because he's done it so often.
Yeah.
With Brantley, I mean, part of why they waited on the surgery last year is they thought he could come back last year.
Yeah.
And so it was an investment last year in we're going for it in 2022. They didn't need Brantley, but, hey, the choice to go for it in 2022 was the correct choice.
Yeah,
and,
obviously.
And if you lose a month, of Brantley in April because you made that choice in April of 2023, because you made that choice in July of 2022. I'd like to have him this year, but I understand the choice they made last summer, even if it didn't pan out. So yeah, it's worrisome if a bunch of them are out for a long time. I don't think that'll be the case. Knock on wood.
Yeah, Andy. I feel like you'll spend the first 6 weeks of the show, starting a week after our next episode, about quit looking at standings, Memorial Day, All-Star break. Really, how much do you think Astros fans now really have to take that to heart for what could be a pretty uneven month until we start getting everybody back?
Are we going to say should or will? Because it should. No, nobody should. Everybody should just enjoy baseball in April. Just enjoy the fact that it's being played. The sun may be shining unless you're in the Northeast, and then it may be snowing. You should have domes. Lord knows why you don't in 2024, 2023, but whatever. The Astros have a really interesting schedule for that first month, because they do play the Braves, they do play the Phillies, they do play the Blue Jays, but outside of that, it's a whole lot of you've got 4 against the White Sox, which nobody really knows what the White Sox are going to look like this year. The Tigers are going to continue to be bad. The Twins are pretty iffy, even with Carlos Correa back for 6 years now. The Pirates, you get 3 there. You're playing the Rangers and the Rays. So it's not like it's not the Yankees 6 times in 2 weeks like we had last year.
Yeah.
Having said all that, we could be 500 coming out of April, and it wouldn't be the end of the world. It's not going to really determine how the season's going. All it's going to do is determine how much noise you're hearing from the Pacific Northwest at that point.
Their worst month last year was April.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that bad. They were, I think, a game or two above 500.
Yeah.
And of course,
And
had
looking
a great
at
next 6 months, unlike
looking
our
at that
friends in the
schedule
Division.
from looking at that schedule from March, April this year, I would assume something probably similar.
Yeah.
1 or 2 games over. And if you're not, it's not. We've had plenty of experience with teams that had really bad starts to their seasons, making it to the playoffs and making it to the World Series in the last 20 years. So again, whatever happens in April doesn't really matter. And you don't freak out about it.
Well, yeah. And it's funny. You brought up the Northwest, and of all the fan bases that have reacted to this Altuve news, the Mariner fan base has really shown their ass, I think. Like, I've seen a lot of Yankee fans spot off, and I've seen a lot of their own kind of being like, well, that's but I just think it's so interesting to me to see this wheatgrass eating, sandal wearing tree huggers getting super, super bloody over a guy that broke a finger, but that's a whole other conversation. Now, listen, there's been some revisionist history, because I remember watching Astros fans on Twitter after Edwin Diaz was hurt, being quick quiet about the WBC. It's a thing. And now it's turned into WBC. It's this evil thing that they all agreed on. I think you can't get revisionist history on it. I'm a fan of it. Has y'all's opinion changed? Andy, we'll start with you on the WBC.
No, I think it's fun. I think it brings more fans to baseball. I think that for the city of Miami this year, I believe that's the first time that stadium has ever been sold out, and I'm including when they opened it. So good for them, and good for the players, because regardless of back up a little bit, the people who seem to be complaining about it seem to fit a certain demographic. We're also part of that same demographic. It's grumpy old white men.
He meets white people.
Grumpy
Hold
old
on.
white
I
men.
am not a grumpy old white man yet. That happens next month when I turn 50.
Exactly. So, all right, Brian's a little bit out of the demographic, but people with a microphone over the age of 50 who seem to be really grumpy about this and got grumpier when Altuve got hurt. I look at the players. I look at the players' reaction. I listen to somebody like Adam Wainwright, who went on and on and on the other day about what a honor it is to play for this team and how much fun they're having. And ultimately, this is a game. It is fun. The players love it. The fans seem to really be loving it. So, and the idea that Jose Altuve or Edwin Diaz or anybody else gets hurt there but doesn't get hurt in spring training is just people who don't understand probability. So I don't understand the animus. I also think that Major League Baseball's inability to actually listen to anybody outside of their own offices works in our favor in this instance. So the WBC is not going away, and it'll be held again in 4 years after this weekend is over. So,
and I guess U.S. is in the championship. Brian, going to play either Japan or Mexico.
Yeah, I watched the WBC this weekend because it was a lot more fun to me than watching basketball. No disrespect to those of you who like basketball, but I thought this was great. I still watched last night after the U.S. beating Cuba after watching Altuve. It is in general, part of the great thing about it is to see the Puerto Rican fans and the Dominican fans and the Venezuelan fans in Miami, and the game sounds different.
It does.
It even sounds different than, it's a playoff type atmosphere, people keep saying, but it still sounds different as a playoff type atmosphere than we saw in the World Series last year. And it's partly because, hey, what does the Dominican Republic do well in the world? They do baseball. They care desperately about this. What does Puerto Rico do well in the world? It's baseball. What does Cuba do well in the world? It's baseball. They have great care about this. It's always going to be different in the United States, because what do we do well in the world? Well, a lot of stuff, right? We don't need to win this tournament.
To interrupt you, but to back you up, I also think, and I noticed this when I was deployed overseas several times, that we have allowed, as Americans, this sort of worldwide rhetoric to become part of, like, it's not cool to be proud to be an American anymore. Like, it just isn't. We can debate whether that's right or not. So I think it's hard for us to get as fired up about our team doing well. I mean, all you do is watch the World Cup and see people that grew up that were in my family wearing Team Ireland jerseys. Our family hasn't lived in Ireland in 150 years, but I just think that there's this like natural lack of coolness these days. And I was speaking to Ed Rivera about it, who's Puerto Rican, and he sort of agreed that it's not cool to be proud to be an American anymore in some walks.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to that. There's always been something to that. And of course, what it means to be an American, you play political scientist for a minute, is a contested thing based on ideology throughout American history. And so it's means a little bit something different than what it means to be Japanese, which is very much, I'm from Japan, and it's very tied into the ethnicity, or to be from Puerto Rico, where, hey, this is one place where we get to be proud to be Puerto Rican and embrace who we are, where we come from. And that's true both for Puerto Ricans on the island, but also in the diaspora in Miami, in New York, and in various communities throughout the United States.
Andy, you got any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, at least compared to what we would consider our peer nations, we're a very young country still. And so a lot of our citizens still, let's put it this way, the number one Ancestry DNA is headquartered in the US and sells most of their kits in the US for a very specific reason, because we're the only country that cares about where we came from versus where we are. And so I think there is, when you add the political climate to it, you add a whole lot of things that we probably don't need to talk about on this show to that mix. I have a hesitation when I see like a cool, I think Lid's Locker in the mall here had a cool USA hockey jersey. And I looked at it. I didn't buy it because I can't think of a situation where I would actually wear it anywhere.
Right.
I don't want to invite the conversation with anybody who would want to have that conversation with me. I don't think other countries have that here. And if they do, they don't care about having those conversations. So that's more on me than it is the rest of the world. But yeah, I just think it's not cool enough to be American right now. And it's certainly cool to back up your country, especially when you are from Venezuela, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Colombia, all these other countries where you are a little bit downtrodden if you're a citizen of this country or
Sure.
you're a resident of this country. And so you're going to have pride in something. Have pride in a baseball team that's doing well. That's not that. And again, that's not a bad thing to me. I think we probably need a little bit more of that and a little bit less Christian nationalism. But
yeah, I mean, I can, again, completely agree. It's funny you said about not being, we talked about this issue, but when we used to go on pass and stuff in Germany, they said, tell everybody you're from Canada. Like, and if you're in civilian clothes, tell them you're from Canada, because you're less likely to be, whatever, taken for.
Now, the other side of that is I probably would have bought a Team USA baseball jersey had they not been so god awful ugly.
They are awful.
I mean, they're not as bad as Great Britain, but they're.
What is? Well, Brian, have you ever seen less effort put into anything than the Great Britain baseball jerseys?
I mean, no.
The actual lettering tried to escape off of one of those guys.
I can't blame the T. And it's hey, look, Great Britain finished fourth, so they get more money for next time. So hopefully they put some of that in uniforms.
Yeah.
And
it is ironic though that the British dropped the T. It's a history joke, everybody. That does wrap up our episode of Go Astros. We will be back next week for finally having our scheduled preview show of what the year will look like. Brian, Go Astros.
Yeah. Hey, tonight, Japan versus Mexico in the World Baseball Classic. So whatever your feelings about it, Japan's been an excellent team and a lot of future major leaguers or a bunch of people who are just really good baseball players in PB. And I don't care. They don't have to care whether they come over to our league or not. Be fun to watch. Go Astros.
Oh, we're 10 days away from actual baseball being actually played. Go Astros.